Okay. Okay, I guess the first thing I'll just mention, since it's Thursday, is just we'll take a look at the homework. And homework 5 is up here. And you'll see, as usual, let me see if my correct microphone is being used. Yes, okay. You'll see, as usual, that there is a similarity between this homework and previous homeworks. So it'll start off with Roman numeral analysis, where you have to complete the figured bass and the Roman numeral. And so the first half of the first page is just basically, all the chords are in root position. So the figured bass is actually assumed to be 5/3 for all of these chords. But the second half actually deals with different inversions. Another difference between this rendering and the previous week is that we're dealing with minor chords this week. So instead of dealing with the triads of the major scale, we're dealing with the triads of the harmonic minor scale. So we'll talk about that. That's a difference that's worth investigating. Another part of the homework deals with just creating simple melodies and kind of labeling the melodies that you have in terms of being, labeling the notes as being chord tones or not chord tones. So that's another component of the homework. We're going to talk about that. I guess another thing, well, this is more or less the same, and then the extra credit is more or less the same. This right here is, you'll have already had experience with this part of the homework. This right here is basically what we have from before, except instead of actually, I've added some components to this. So before, it was just like identify the solfege associated with these melodies, but now it's also identify, like what we were doing last time. We were marking beats. We were disambiguating the active beats from the inactive beats and the big beats. So there's this distinction that you can have between all of them. And so your TAs will talk about it as well, but the idea is you mark basically every beat, active and inactive, up to an 8th note subdivision. So for instance, there's 8 8-note subdivisions in this measure. There's 8 8-note subdivisions in this measure. And for all 4 of these, that's the division that I want you to go until. And then basically what you do is you mark all those with numbers, and then you parenthesize the ones that are inactive. So for example, this one right here, there's a 8th note beat here, but it's inactive. So you put a parentheses. And then after you stripe all that, and you put parentheses around it, then you add an additional layer of annotation by underlining the big beats. So basically, this is a measure of 4/4. So correspondingly, there are 4 big beats in this measure, 4 big beats in this measure, etc. So you would underline 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that is those are some easy points. But if you can do that, it'll kind of give you a good framework for processing the differences between all of these different rhythmic events. And yeah, so there's that. And I guess as usual, dictation, and what I've been doing for the last couple of dictations is just giving you a few hints. So hopefully these hints help you. Yeah, when I say skip, it doesn't have to be a third. It can actually be, I should say a leap or a skip, right? It's not necessarily a third. It could be a fourth. It could be a fifth. So just keep that in mind. So with that being said, let us actually take a look at the minor scale. So last time we were talking about different triads of the major scale, or I mean, not last time, but relatively recently. So we have the triads of the major scale, right? And this is what they are, right? The 1 chord is always going to be major. The 2 chords can be minor. The 3 chord's going to be minor, the 4 chord's going to be major, etc. Right? And you can see how it doesn't matter which key we're in. If we're in the key of C major, these Roman numerals will have the same exact quality as the Roman numerals here. In other words, like the 2 chord will be lowercase for being minor in any major key. The 3 chord will be lowercase for being minor. The 4 Roman numeral is going to be uppercase for being major. 5 chord is going to be uppercase, etc. Right? Now, when we're dealing with minor, we're in a little bit of a predicament because actually, what happens with minor is that there are actually many different ways of thinking about chords in minor. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So let me actually, I think I might have to refer to another OneNote for this, the 1C OneNote. But let me see if I can find this thing that I wanted to explain about this. Okay, let's see. A lot of this stuff you don't have to know. Wait a second, where did this go? I think okay, I'm gonna use the OneNote search feature and I'm gonna type in combined. I think that's what I called it, combined triads. You know what, I'm just gonna re-demonstrate this because maybe I don't have an explicit article on this. So let me show you what I mean. Okay, so what we have here, let me actually make sure the audio is coming out correctly. Audio engine, Zoom audio device. Okay, cool. So we're in a situation, let's say we have something like this. Let's say we start out with a C major scale and we do this. Right? And just logically speaking, we can build snowmen on every single scale degree, right? And you can get all the triads of the C major scale. Okay, now let's take a look at A minor, okay? Let's do triads, and let's just do natural minor first. Of A natural minor, okay? So start with an A, build a snowman. Remember, the key signature of C major is the same as the key signature of A natural minor because they're related to each other. A natural minor is the relative minor of C major. Oh, my contact is bugging me. And as a result, they share the same exact key signature, right? So I could be in a situation where I go, right? And these right here are all the triads of the A natural minor scale. And down here are the notes of the A natural minor scale. And similarly, up here are the notes of the C major scale. Okay, so these are the notes in question, right? So I'll make these marks root for red. Okay. Okay, so now we've labeled this correctly, right? Let's actually remember, let's recall what the qualities for these particular chords are. And we'll do that by performing a Roman numeral analysis, I guess, on this. And the capitalization will tell you the quality. So the one chord is it major or minor? Now, I think by now you know the thought process behind this, right? This indeed is unison, minor, second, minor, third, major, third. Unison, minor, second, minor, third, right? So it's a major triad. So this one chord is going to be a major, capital, right? Does anyone remember the quality, whoops, for the next chord? What is the quality for this chord right here?
Minor.
Minor. I guess someone might have thought, oh, this is a good quality chord. Well, that's not what I meant by that. So you got it right. It's a minor chord, right? It's 2 chord. It's not letting me advance using that shortcut for some reason. Okay, how about this one right here? This one right here would be, what is it? Is it going to be major or minor?
Minor.
Minor, right? How about this one?
Major.
Major, awesome. How about this one?
Major.
Major, great. This one?
Minor.
Minor. How about this one?
Diminished.
Diminished. And then, oh, you know what? I know why that's happening. I know exactly why this is happening. It has to do with this app called, it's called Keyboard Maestro. Okay, so this one right here is diminished. And then we're back to major, right? So these are the qualities, and these are the triads of the C major scale. Now let's do the same thing, but with A natural minor. And we're actually going to go, we're going to do this actually, before we do this, let's actually build up, let's construct all of the scales, of the minor scales that we've known so far, okay? Let's do A natural minor, and let's actually, let's do A, let's see what happens. Let's do A harmonic minor, and we're just going to modify the notes of natural minor. And let's do the same thing for A melodic minor. Ascending, right? Because a melodic minor descending is what?
A natural.
Exactly. So we already have that information here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do the same exact examination we did for the major scale, but we're going to do it for all of these scales here. And you're going to find that the triads of the A natural minor scale differ from the harmonic minor scale and differ from the melodic minor scale, but it's a good activity to do, to perform this anyway. So truth be told, I'll get to which one we're going to use eventually, but triads of minor scales. Okay. So what we have here in terms of quality, we have an A, C, E. So this right here is a minor third, and then we've got a major third. So what triad are we dealing with?
Minor triad.
A minor triad, and we're going to do a lowercase 1, okay? And then how about this right here? Unison, minor second, minor third. Unison, minor second, minor third. Diminished. So one chord, and then immediately, right off the bat, we have a diminished chord. We're spicing it up, all right? It's getting really spicy, guys. Okay, so we got a diminished chord. Then after that, for the third one, we have our good old C major triad. So this is going to be an uppercase 3. And then this one right here, minor second, major second, minor third. Unison, minor second, major second, minor third. Major third. A minor third with a major third on top. So that is uppercase or lowercase?
Lowercase.
Lowercase, exactly, right? Okay, now what do we, oh man, okay. I'm excited about coming to this chord because this chord right here is significant in terms of which actual triad scheme we adopt for minor, okay? Because ultimately there's a default scheme of these three, and there's one that's significant. This chord is significant in helping us decide which one we're going to use. Okay, this one right here is what? Unison, minor second, minor third, right? And then we have unison, minor second, minor third, major third, right? Okay, so what do we have here? What quality?
Minor.
Minor. So we've got a minor 5 chord. Okay, and now how about this one right here? Unison, minor second, minor third, major third. Unison, minor second, minor third. So capital. And then what do we have here? Well, what do we have here? Unison, minor second, minor third, major third. Unison, minor second, minor third. Well, we have a major 7 chord. Interesting. And then we start with what we end with. We end with what we start with, which is just a 1 chord. Okay. So these are the chords that we get if we are building a piece using triads of A natural minor scale. Now, this is not off limits because, as we'll find, there are actually many songs that use this configuration. However, classical music, and I would argue that most music doesn't use this kind of minor for its harmonic sensibility. I would argue that most music actually uses another one of these two options as its harmonic basis, as basically the scale that constitutes the basis for the harmonic choices. A scale that constitutes the basis for the harmonic choices. I wonder which scale that is. Well, let's skip ahead. Let's try these triads of a melodic minor. Okay, I wonder if this melodic minor scale constitutes the basis for the harmony in our piece. I wonder. Okay, well, let's try it out and let's check. Okay, so what we have here is we have we have a triad, A minor. It's actually the same as it's what's up here. So we can, oh wait, you know what? We actually have to modify these. I forgot, we haven't changed this. This is all still natural minor. So how do we change a natural minor into a harmonic minor?
Raise the 7th.
Yeah. We raise the 7th. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to look for every single G. Nothing but a G thing. All right. We find every single G and we have to make sure that we sharp it, right? Okay, and this one is actually still sharp. It's just in parentheses, right? So we got that, right? Now, oh my gosh, the contact. Okay. So what we have here, this chord is identical to the chord above it, but we won't get there. We'll first do ascending melodic, but we have to change it, okay? So how do you change a natural minor into an ascending melodic minor?
Raise the 6 and 7.
Okay, cool. So first we're going to raise the 6, which is this F. We're going to raise it to an F sharp. Find all the Fs, okay? Okay, as I said before, ain't nothing but a G thing. We'll raise all these Gs, G sharp. All right, here we go. So now, that's cool. Okay, that's cool because I hadn't realized that I actually used this configuration more than I thought I did. I would think of the 3 of these configurations, this is the least common, I would say. This one right here, well, I'm not going to tell you which one is the most common. I think by process of elimination, you already know which one is the most common, but let's just actually identify the triads here, okay? So what I'm going to do is this chord is still the same as the ones above, so it's very easy to tell that this is still a 1 chord. Now, what about this chord? Unison, minor second, minor third. Okay. Unison, minor second, minor third, major third. Okay, so what are we dealing with here?
Minor triad.
Minor triad. Okay. Now we have this. Getting spicy. Unison, minor second, minor third, major third. Unison, minor second, minor third, major third.
Augmented.
Augmented. So we're getting some augmented chords here. We have a 3 plus augmented, okay? Then after that, we have a major chord, because remember this F is still sharp from before. Unison, minor second. Oh, well, I gave you the answer. So it's a major chord. Then this. Also, I'm hoping that you're starting to hear these differences. Like I'm hoping that hopefully you're thinking about these chords and you're hearing them as major or minor. And there's some ways that you can differentiate major and minor in terms of how they sound. So for instance, let me bring my other microphone back here, and let me switch my input. And what I'm going to do, right? So in general, majors. Majors, can you hear me okay? Does it sound like I'm speaking close into the mic? Okay, cool. Majors tend to sound happy. Minors.
Wait, sorry, the audio your mic gets muffled when you start playing the piano.
Oh, it is. That is interesting. I wonder why that would happen. Well, I guess I'll just have to time my speaking and my playing. So that right there is a major chord. It sounds somewhat happy. Minor chord sounds more sad. Right? So that's one way you can tell a major chord and a minor chord apart. Now, the problem is we're thinking about this as on a local chord event. So each chord we're thinking about as we're almost forgetting the previous chord when I'm telling you this. It's like, oh, this chord sounds major and this chord sounds sad. Truth be told, I can think of a chord progression that just sounds kind of sad without any minor chords. So like, I mean, I guess tempo can also affect perception of this. Like the up song, right? It sounds a little bit sad. It might sound happy. Probably doesn't sound sad. It just sounds like kind of wistful and nostalgic, right? But those are major chords. Right? And then if I think of something like right? I mean, I guess that those are both major chords, right? It sounds, you might think that sounds sad just by the tempo or kind of the wistfulness of it. But so there's a certain kind of mood, I guess, that chord progressions can have as well. Like these are chord progressions. This is not just one chord, it's two chords, right? That I was just playing this chord and then this chord. Back to this chord, right? So that's something kind of to be wary of, that not only can a chord kind of provide a mood, but a chord progression can provide a mood. So here's the thing, here's an add-on to that. So with that being said, it's kind of helpful to think about both of those things and kind of to hear those things and to try to figure out why one thing sounds the way it does, and so that you can just like kind of listen to these things and kind of figure out that's major, that's diminished, or that's major, or that's diminished as well, or that's minor, right? So it helps, and I think as we continue this dictation, I'll probably add more chord IDs as well. But
So anyway, over here we have, what do we have? We have a unison, minor second, minor third, a major third on bottom, and a minor third on top. So that happens to be a 5 major chord. This just happens to be diminished, right? Just kind of going a little bit faster here. This happens to be...
Is the diminished a 6 or a 7?
Ah, thanks for catching that. I said, hey, I'm going a little faster here. I shouldn't be going faster here because I'm making mistakes. So right here, that's a 6 chord, diminished. Thanks for catching that. And then this one right here is also a diminished chord. And then after that, we're back to a 1 chord, okay? Now, so this is the arrangement of triads we get if we actually use melodic minor as the basis for our the triads of our scale, right? Ascending melodic minor, I should say. Now, let's do the same thing, but let's go to harmonic minor. So harmonic minor, it's actually in agreement with the previous chord. I'm just going to go a little quicker. You can always verify this, right? I think the thought process at this point is more or less obvious for what I'm doing, right? This is consistent with the one above it. So that's 2, diminished. Now this one is consistent with the one below it. So it's 3 augmented. This one is consistent with both of these. It's a 4, it's a minor 4. This one right here is going to be a dominant 5, a major 5, I should say. And then this one right here is consistent with the one above it, major 6 chord. And then this one right here is not consistent with the one above it. It's actually sharped, right? So it's actually consistent with the one below it. So it's 7 diminished. And then we're back to a 1 chord, right? So you might have already guessed this, but this triad arrangement is the one that's most commonly associated with harmonic chord progressions. It's the reason why we call this minor harmonic minor, because it's and the main reason why we use this chord progression it boils down to this particular chord right here, this 5 chord right here. Believe it or not, this 5 chord, the fact that it's major, and I guess the fact that this right here, well, yeah, I guess that the fact that the 5 chord is major makes a big difference in why we use harmonic minor instead of natural minor. Truth be told, ascending melodic minor also has this as well. So, but with that being said, this is the kind of flavor that we most common encounter, especially in classical music. Not to say that we can't use the other flavors, but this is a big reason. This note right here, the fact that this 5 chord is a major chord, is a huge reason why we use this particular chord progression, this particular scale. Now you might wonder, why is this so important? Why is it so important that this note is sharped? Well, it comes down to this idea of leading tone. Okay, so I want to actually, whoops. I want to actually play a major scale for you. Oh, whoa, that's not correct. Right, so right here, this is a C major scale. Right, C major scale. Now right here, this note to this note, whoops, not that note to that note, my mistake. This note to this note, I'm actually going to make, I'm going to color this note lavender, or I guess magenta. It's the closest thing. Lavender for leading tone, okay? Now this interval right here, between this note and this note, is actually going to be a half step, okay? Now let's do the same thing, but let's do it in natural minor scale. We'll use A. Actually, we'll use C. C natural minor scale. Okay, so right here, well, in order to make a major or minor, we actually have to, a natural minor, we have to flat the 3, the 6, and the 7, right? Now, what you'll notice here is that this particular, I'm actually going to uncolor this. I'm going to make it black. Okay. This note right here is the leading tone. And from here to here is a half step, okay? I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to construct the other scales. Basically, what I'm going to try to show you is that if the next to last note of the scale and the first note of the scale and the final note of the scale, I should say, is a half step, this particular note is thought of as the leading tone. Okay? So let's actually think about the C harmonic minor scale for a second. And the C harmonic minor scale, basically, well, let's think about it. If this is C natural minor scale, what do we have to do to make this C harmonic minor scale?
Raise the 7th by a half step.
Exactly. So this B flat will become B natural, right? Okay, now, what is the distance between this note? I guess I should say this is a whole step over here, and this is actually what they call subtonic, not leading tone. Okay. Right? Now this right here, though, from here to here, is this a whole step or half step? A B to a C. A B to a C is most certainly a half step, right? Okay, so this right here, I'm just going to write leading tone. Just for abbreviation's sake. Oh God. Okay. Half step, half step. And this right here, I'm just going to call subtonic. Subtonic. So this leading tone, I'm going to make lavender again, okay? This leading tone is lavender once again. And this is half step, right? So just by looking at this particular scale versus this particular scale, the fact that this right here, this harmonic minor scale has a leading tone resolution from its 7th scale degree to its final scale degree is significant. Because why is the leading tone important? Why is it important that there's actually this half step as the final note of the scale? Well, this particular interval actually makes something feel a little bit more, this particular interval adds more tension, okay? So this I guess I should say this particular scale degree, when you're on the scale degree, you really want to resolve to this scale degree. Like this particular scale degree is really, really unstable. It like desperately wants to go to this scale degree when it's the leading tone. So for example, if I play something, you really want to resolve to, that time I used the leading tone note. I'm gonna do that one more time. I'm gonna sit on the leading tone. This is the leading tone. It's really, you desperately want to go to, right? So there's this idea that the leading tone really wants to resolve to the tonic. Does the piano sound funny to anyone else? I think it's because there's 2 layers of piano. Let me actually switch here. Does it sound better now?
Yes, that's a lot better.
Okay, cool. Okay, awesome. So yes, you have the problem is when I have the software open, it's trying to use Sibelius Piano, and I guess I could do this. Let me do this. It's a little bit tedious, but I can do this. Right. So there's this idea that this leading tone really wants to resolve to the tonic. If I play this with the subtonic instead of the leading tone, if I'm using, see, all of these scale degrees have names, right? So you could actually call this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? And there's actually little carets here as well, right? 1, 2, 3. You could call this flat 3, 4, 5. This is what a jazz person would call it, flat 7. I guess you can call this 1 again, right? I'll call it 8. 8 is the same thing as 1. Right? So when you have the flat 7 scale degree, like compared to a major scale, right? That's called a subtonic. When you have a normal 7 scale degree when compared to major, that's called the leading tone. So I'll do the same thing here. It's 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5. What is this one? Is it 6 or is it flat 6? Anyone have an idea? Anyone?
Flat 6.
Flat 6, exactly. So it's flat 6. Remember, when we're describing these scale degrees in this manner, or maybe you haven't learned about this yet, it's when I put a flat here or not put a flat here, it's in relation to the major scale. So if this was a major scale, a C major scale, this would be a 6, but since it's A flat, it would be flat 6 compared to the C major scale. That might not be that obvious, but just go along with it for now. So in relation to the major scale, a harmonic minor scale has a flat 3 and a flat 6, right? In relation to a major scale, a natural minor scale has a flat 3, a flat 6, and a flat 7. So there's this idea that if you have a normal 7, when compared against a major scale or in a major scale, if it's the same scale degree as the major scale, then it's going to be called the leading tone. But if it's a flat 7, it's called the subtonic. Now, as it turns out, this 7 to 8, if you're playing a scale, when you have the 7th scale degree as a leading tone, as a half step away from the tonic, it has more gravity towards this final note than the natural minor scenario. It's subtle, but 7, flat 7, I should say, 1. That doesn't sound as gravitationally intense as, right? That half step creates more tonal tension. I don't exactly, it's just strange. Now, part of this might be how we were primed to listen to music culturally, but there's something about it that is just very, very strong. Now, the reason I'm bringing this whole thing up is because this particular note, now if we analyze this particular note, remember how I talked about the 5 chord being really significant? The 5 chord, let's think about the notes, right? Like, I'm going to argue that this note right here is the most significant note in why we actually use harmonic minor instead of natural minor. Now, what note, what color did I make this note?
Pink.
What it, pink, right? Or lavender, right? And why would I make it lavender? Any idea? Why would I make this note lavender? Someone put it in the chat. Leading tone, exactly. Okay, what is the definition of ST and LT? ST is subtonic. LT is leading tone. Okay. Now there just happen to be names for these particular scale degrees, right? You can actually, every single one of these notes has a different name for its scale degree. The 5 is actually called the dominant. The 4 is called the subdominant. The 7 is called the leading tone, or you can separate it. If it's a flat 7, they disambiguate it. They differentiate it by calling it subtonic, right? So these particular scale degrees, depending on the quality, have different names. So a 7, if you have a 7th scale degree, it's called the leading tone. If you have a flat 7, it's called the subtonic. So the idea is when you have, let me see. Actually, if you have the 7th, if you have the leading tone, there's a strong attraction to want to resolve to the 8th scale degree, right? So the idea is when I made this note in magenta, pink, I made it lavender, I should say. There's this idea that this note will be really, really close to resolving to this note, root, right? I guess the tonic of the scale, right? The tonic of the scale is A, right? So the tonic, I should choose a color that starts with T, tan. I guess I can use tan, right? Let me actually do it. Okay. Okay. So this right here, I'm actually going to do something. I'm going to make the tonic tan. And notice how the tonic of the scale is basically the anchor of the entire scale, right? The actual scale itself, the first scale degree, is the tonic of the entire scale, right? Like you can think about each chord as having its own anchor, but you can kind of think of the scale in itself as having its own anchor, right? So what I want you to notice is that this leading tone going to tonic is just a half step away. Okay? Now, the reason I'm harping on this chord so much is because when we're thinking about actual harmonic chord progressions, which cadences, for instance, which we talked a little bit about last time, we're talking about this chord right here, a 5 chord going to a 1 chord. This is like the most conclusive way you can resolve a chord progression, right? A 5 chord going to a 1 chord, right? And that's something that I was trying to emphasize at some point, right? There's this idea that this 5 chord going to this 1 chord is really, really emphatic, right? So what I'm trying to get at here is the reason we're spending so much time on this 1 chord, and the reason I explained the leading tone, and the reason that I tried to separate these scales in terms of this particular chord is that this 5 chord has the leading tone. And since in a harmonic progression, the leading tone makes for a very salient resolution, we want to use this in the 5 chord. We want our 5 chord to be the most convincing 5 chord it could possibly be, so that when we actually resolve to the 1 chord, it sounds ultra convincing. So for example, if I play this, let me actually open my mixer again. Is it unbearable to hear it like this? I'll lower the volume anyway. All right, so anyway. Okay, that's a 5 chord. That's the leading tone. Leading tone. Right? Now how about this? We have this. This one seems like it doesn't have as much tension, right? This one right here. doesn't have as much tension as this. It all comes down to this note. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a 5 chord going to a 1 chord in natural minor, which is basically, that's a 5 chord, a minor 5 chord going to a 1 chord. It doesn't have the leading tone. It's using the subtonic. Okay, now I'm going to play a 5 chord in harmonic minor going to a 1 chord in harmonic minor. Okay, and it's basically using this, basically G sharp. It's using the leading tone. Okay. Now, you might think, well, you might think that there are certain things in music that are very arbitrary. That may be the case, but this is one of those things that's actually so foundational to the way we think about music. Like if you go back to the 16th century and you think about counterpoint, which is basically the first time that people actually started classifying ways of creating harmony. Basically, you can, like the first thing that they discovered in like the 1200s or 1300s or whatever in the West is that you really want this leading tone to tonic motion. Like you might think, this is just one of those other arbitrary things that Nakul is saying, but really it's actually, this is like the foundation. This is like the way that we like actually think about tonal music. It's like this idea that there's this gravitation between the 5 chord and the 1 chord, right? It goes back to this idea of having, like if you have this leading tone to a tonic, you're actually in a situation where you're emphasizing a certain note of a particular chord, namely this leading tone in major or minor happens to exist conveniently in the 5 chord. Okay, now let's think about it. What are some of the chords in which this leading tone G sharp note exists in? Or let's look at the major. Let's look at the A natural. No, let's look at the C, the major and minor and harmonic minor scale. Okay, this leading tone B. Let's say if we build chords on this. Let's say if we go to, you know what? I'm struggling here. Yes, let's take a look at this, right? We have this B, right? This B right here happens to be the leading tone, right? In the key of C major. So I'm going to color that B lavender. Okay. Now, this particular B is, right? So this B happens to exist in the 5 chord. What's another chord that the leading tone note exists in?
The 3 chord.
3 chord, right? So the leading tone exists here as well. How about, where's another place that the leading tone note exists?
6 chord.
7th.
7 chord, right? So it's the 3 and the 7 and the 5. So it's basically every other chord. And then I guess the 1 chord doesn't have enough notes to actually get to that note. So 3 chord, the 5 chord, and the 7 chord. Now of these 3 chords, it just happens to be that the 5 chord is the best at exercising this kind of dominant function. It's basically the best chord. It's the most common chord of these 3 particular chords as a chord, in kind of a recipe to create a really strong harmonic progression, right? When you're on a 5 chord, where do you want to go? What is the dominant function? Like, what is the dominant function? Basically means that this chord, what it basically means, this 5 chord is the dominant, right? That's like the scale degree name. You know how we called like the 7 chord the leading tone? this 5 chord right here is called the dominant, right? And so I guess there's this idea that the 5 chord, there's this idea of this dominant function, okay? The idea behind the dominant function is that in order to have the most compelling kind of resolution, this is one way of thinking about it. The penultimate chord of a piece usually has the strongest desire to resolve, right? Like if you want to finish a piece with a bang, you would want to finish a piece with a bang. You'd want to use a chord progression that actually kind of closes the deal, right? Right? So more abstractly, the chord that's right before the last chord of the piece is the dominant. It has a dominant function, right? That's one way of thinking about it. So the 5 chord, which is called the dominant, the scale degree that's the scale degree that's on the fifth scale degree is already called the dominant. So the dominant chord is like the default candidate for exercising this kind of dominant function. Now this is kind of, I should say that like most people, when they think about the dominant function, they literally think of the 5 chord going to the 1 chord, okay? So let's just think about it that way. So this chord right here, this 5 chord going to would likely resolve to a 1 chord, okay? And it happens to contain the leading tone as well, right? So if we're looking at the A harmonic minor scale, we have a 5 chord and it has the leading tone and it also wants to resolve to the 1 chord. Okay? So by having this leading tone, it just makes it want to resolve to the 1 chord that much more, because this leading tone is very, very close to this tan tonic chord. This lavender leading tone note is very, very close to this tonic tan note. It's like gravitationally attracted to it, okay? So anyway, I've said a lot about this. I hope I haven't confused you. I guess at the end of the day, you could just know that you have to use harmonic minor scale as kind of the basis. But this is hopefully giving you a little bit of an intuition as to why. There's this significance placed upon this idea of a leading tone, okay? And this gets to the idea that certain notes are treated as more significant than other notes. And this is something we're going to talk about more and more. But along these lines, if you have, I guess like for the sake of the homework, when you're trying to analyze a chord progression, like that I've given you, for instance, let's say I give you a chord progression in A. I'm only going to give you them in harmonic minor for one. So for instance, what I'm going to do for the homework, everything's going to be based on harmonic minor. Okay? Right? So if we know that we're based on harmonic minor, this key signature could be one of two things, right? This key signature could be C major or A minor, right? So if we're in the key of A minor, what is this chord in Roman numeral?
One.
It's a one, right? Now how about this one?
Two.
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 Okay, how about this one?
Capital 3.
Capital
Wait,
3.
sorry.
Not capital 3, but capital 8, 7, 6, right? 1, 7, 6. So capital 6, right? And then how about this one?
Five.
Capital 5, right? And let's say I go to another chord right here. What is this one?
Lowercase 1.
Lowercase 1. Now I just brought this up an octave just for fun, okay? Now, what is, okay, so now here I've got a 5 chord going to a 1 chord. What is this called? What kind of cadence is this? It's an
Authentic.
Exactly, it's an authentic cadence. A 5 chord going to a 1 chord, it's an authentic cadence. So basically, hopefully this checks out for you. Basically, what you're going to be in a situation to do is that when you're trying to figure out these chords and you're trying to analyze them in terms of Roman numerals, you're going to find that they're going to match exactly with the triads of the harmonic minor scale. Like every single quality that you encounter will just be exactly the kind of qualities that you see on this sheet on the one note, right? The ones that we've kind of determined and we've kind of calculated and we've figured out ourselves. But it'll exactly match these qualities. So if you have a chord built on the 3rd scale degree, it's going to be the 3rd scale degree of the harmonic minor scale. If you have a chord built on the 4th scale degree, it's going to be a chord built on the 4th scale degree of the harmonic minor scale. So it's going to be a minor 4 chord. It's going to be an augmented 3 chord. It'll be a major 5 chord. It'll be a major 6 chord, right? These are the chords that you're expecting to find in this particular scale, in this particular flavor of minor. And a way that you can remember that we're going to be using harmonic minor instead of natural minor is that harmony, the word harmony refers to creating, it often refers to layering notes and creating chords, right? So you can kind of think of harmonic minor as relating to harmony and actually creating chord progressions, right? So let me take a look at the chat. I think I saw something in there. 5 to 1 and 5 to lowercase 1 and 5 to uppercase 1 are both authentic cadences. They both exercise this harmonic function of having a 5 chord going to a 1 chord. There's this strong dominant function on account of both of them. This idea, I guess, the most strict way of thinking about dominant function, the most conservative way of thinking about dominant function is that you have a chord that resolves to a chord whose root is a 5th below it. So you have a chord like a G major chord, and then you resolve to a chord whose root is a 5th below it. So in this case, a 5th above G is C, right? So that is the most conservative way of thinking about the dominant function. The way I've described it here is more of an abstract way of thinking about the dominant function, but this is really in bold. This is the most conservative way of thinking about it. Okay. It's useful to think about it in the abstract when we get to other instances of this, but let's see. Okay. So anyway, let's think about this a little bit more, and let's actually remember, this is what we're working off, but if we actually are in a situation where we don't need to be in root, we don't necessarily have to be in root position, right? I could actually do a different chord progression and do something like this. Okay? So let's say we're in this situation, okay? So what do we have here? Well, let's use the shortcut, okay? Let's use the shortcut. Remember, what we're trying to do is we're trying to construct a Roman numeral analysis, right? So in order to concoct a Roman numeral analysis, we actually have to figure out both the root of the chord as well as the figured base of the chord. So if we're trying to figure out the root of the chord, there are two ways that we can actually do this. which we've talked about last time. Okay, so what we could do is we could flip the chord into the correct position, right? And then the bottom note, once you find the snowman position, the bottom note of the snowman is the root, right? Or you can look for the fourth in chord, and the top of the fourth is the root. And this is the shortcut, right? So let's use the shortcut, right? If you see a chord that isn't in snowman position, we can just look for the top of the fourth. And in that case, the top of the fourth is what note in this example?
A.
A, exactly. So A, in the key that we're in, remember A, we're in the key of A minor. So what is A in this example? In terms of Roman numeral?
1.
A 1, right? A lowercase 1. Now let's figure out the inversion. So we actually have to figure out the root. Roman numeral analysis contains two components, the root and the inversion. And so if we calculate the inversion, we use the Arabic numerals. So one of the things we can do is we can use the bass note, and like we can compare, I remember we talked about, we can compare the bass note against the actual position in the root position version of the chord, or we can use figured bass, right? And figured bass, if you remember, is just calculating the intervals, right? So what are the, let's use the shortcut. So what are the intervals here? What's the outside interval?
6th.
It's a 6, right? And then what is the inside interval or the bottom interval? I can't.
A 4th.
It's not a 4th. It's going to be, well, we're calculating the bottom to the outside and then bottom to the middle. So anyone, I actually can't open the chat while my while this is open. So just shout it out.
3rd.
3rd, exactly. So it's a 6th and a 3rd. Now, let's do the same thing for this one. Let's figure out the top note. Let's figure out what this interval is. Let's use the shortcut. The top of the 4th will tell us the root of the chord, which is the Roman numeral component. What is the top of the 4th?
B.
B, exactly. It's B. So the top of the 4th is B. And as a result of that, what is B in the key of A minor? Remember, we're comparing against the tonic of the key.
2.
It's 2, right? And remember, tonic, going forward, I guess I can use tan for tonic. That's our tonic note. This is the note that centers our entire key, right? So 2. And what inversion are we dealing with? We'll just use Roman numerals. Remember, 6/3 is actually first inversion, so let's use inversions. Let's think about the Roman. Sorry, let's think about the intervals and calculate the figured bass that way. So what is the outside interval? Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. I should be careful here. A 2 chord in harmonic minor is not going to be a minor chord. So you actually have to, in some ways, you know how I talked about how there's 2 ways of figuring out the root? If you flip the chord into root position, it might be a little easier for you to figure out the intervals within that chord, thereby telling you if it's minor or diminished, etc., right? So you're kind of left no choice but to kind of flip it into root position anyway. Meaning, like if I chord, right, and I flip this note right here, red for root, I'm going to make the note I'm going to make it red, right? If I'm in this situation, even though we figured out the root is B, it might be a little bit difficult for you to comprehend that B is the bottom. And then if we're trying to figure out the quality of this chord, we have to count from the root, right? So for instance, it's easier to see it like this, if you understand what I mean. So like the distance between this note to this note is unison, minor second, minor third, right? And then the distance from this, the middle note to the top note is unison, minor second, minor third, right? So what quality? We have a minor third underneath a minor third. What quality are we dealing with here? Diminished, right? So we have to be careful. Like the shortcut has its shortcomings. How appropriate, right? So you can't just it's not it's a trade-off, right? So that why you might have thought, well, in some ways the shortcut's actually making your life more difficult, right? But if you kind of remember, if you can kind of keep in mind that this root note has to be positioned as the bottom note of the chord, in your mind, you can kind of do a little mental calculation. You can kind of visually see that, you can imagine that this note is an octave lower just by kind of seeing it in your mind, right? And then once you see it like that, you can kind of construct the intervals accordingly and figure out if it's major, minor, diminished, or augmented, right? So anyway, we have a 2 diminished chord here. And what is the figured bass? What is the outside interval?
6.
6. And then what is the inside interval?
3.
Exactly. Okay. So 6, 3. Now let's do this one. Let's use the top of the 4th. What is the root?
F.
F, okay. Now how does F compare against the tonic of our key? The F is the tonic of our key. A, B, C, D, E, F, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's a 6 chord, right? Now let's figure out the capitalization, or the lowercasedness, or the diminished, circled, or plussed, augmented nature of this chord. And so by doing so, in order to do so, let's actually, in our mind, let's flip this note up an octave, right? And in that case, we're not even using top of the 4th anymore, right? But we're confirming it. It's actually, you can double check your work by thinking about both scenarios, right? You can perform the shortcut. You could see if it confirms what you got when you flipped the chord, right? It's a good way to check your work. That's why it's good to have 2 different ways of doing things. So there's a silver lining. In my mind, I'm flipping this chord, but I can clearly see it in thirds. And that way I can figure out that the quality indeed is what? Major, right? So we're dealing with, if you remember from before, it's a 6 chord. So it's going to be a capital 6. And what inversion are we dealing with? What is the outside interval? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, good. And the bottom interval?
4th.
Exactly. Okay, we're getting there. It's logically, it makes sense, right? Hopefully this makes sense. Now let's talk about this one. This one, we're in snowman configuration. We're in snowman's land. And so in this particular situation, we're going to compare the root of this chord against the tonic of the key, right? The tonic and tan. What is this chord in Roman numerals? What's the Roman numeral number? What interval is this? From the bottom, from the tonic up.
5th.
5th, right? And then in this case, we can actually clearly see that this is a major triad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Unison, minor second, minor third, unison, minor second, minor third. So this is just a 5 chord in root position. Okay. And then what do we have here? What note is this?
A.
A. So we are in the key of A minor, and we have this 1 chord right here. And let's just do this one again. I'm just going to quickly flip this. I can flip this in my mind using the flipping method, right? And I'll flip it back later. So what are we dealing with here? 1, 2, 3, 4, a 5 chord, right? Okay, the 5 chord. It happens to be a capital 5 chord because it's, right, minor second, major second, major third, unison, minor second, minor third, right? I'm just kind of doing the flipping method kind of quickly. And so we have a 5 chord. And then what's the figured bass? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 4. Okay? So same process, honestly, as last week, but I guess just in terms of the landscape of harmonic minor instead of major. So this will open up more possibilities for particular chords that you can use. And I know today we've spent a lot of time talking about theory. We haven't done too many listening examples, but we're going to do more of that next class. But it's one of those situations where this homework actually introduces more things than I thought it would. But so it actually introduces this whole concept, and then it reinforces this idea of scale degrees in general, and like what are scale degrees? Like, do scale degrees have do some scale degrees have more of a significance than other scale degrees? And it turns out that certain scale degrees do have more of a significance. If we were actually in person and we were in a situation where we were using the solfege hand signs, which we haven't been really doing, but we might actually do that. What's nice about the solfege hand signs is that they actually convey certain things, certain strengths in these particular hand signs. So for example, if I go do, do, it sounds strong. I'm like do, 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 right? If I go re, re, it's sort of unstable, right? It's kind of like, is it gonna, where's it pointing? Where's re pointing? Re is pointing to me, right? Re is like, it's pointing up to me, do, re, mi. So mi is strong. It's like, yo, man, this is my space right here. This is me, okay? Like me right here, this is like, it's solid, right? This is a gesture. If you did this to someone, they'd be like, whoa, whoa, I don't want no trouble, right? So me, now if we get to fa, someone could think you're like, hey, no, I don't, thumbs down. But really fa, what is fa pointing to? Fa is unstable, right? Fa, where's my thumb pointing? To me, right? Fa, me. Now so is like, yo, this is my space, This is like, you're setting, this is like, there's something about this that's very like, this is a bold gesture, right? So, right? It's strong. So has a very, very solid place in terms of the gestures that we're using, right? Now la is kind of gentle. It's kind of flexible. It's neither here nor there. It's like not really intimidating. It's not really going in a particular direction. It's like, it's neither here nor there. It's la. It's neutral. T, what about T? What is T doing? What is my index finger of T doing? Number 1, no. T is pointing up to do. Now T right here, what is T? T, what have we spent so much time talking about today, to your great delight? We spent a lot of time talking about leading tones, right? Now T is the leading tone. And so T has a very, very strong function. it really, really wants to go to do. T, do, T, do. Do, re, mi, do, re, mi, fa, mi, re, do, right? T, do, T, do. So there's this idea that certain scale degrees want to go to certain places. Now you can call these scale degrees many things. You could call do, you can call it the tonic, you can call re the supertonic, you can call mi the mediant, fa the subdominant, the dubdominant. You can call so the dominant. You can call la. I always mix these up. I always mix up the mediant and the submediant. 1 second. Yes, I got it right. I got lucky. So, so this is the submediant. This right here, T, is the leading tone. And then we're back to the tonic. So we're going to talk more about notes and chords and scale degrees and non-scale degrees next class, in more of a musical context sort of thing. But just know that certain notes of the scale tend to be significant in certain ways. And that's one of the bases for why harmonic minor is used over natural minor. But anyway, we're out of time. We'll talk more about this next time. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to stick around and answer to the best of my ability. But yeah, with that being said, I guess we'll just call it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Oh, I think I have a question.
Sure.
So for the cadence, does it matter? I mean, does those cadence work for either major and minor chords? Like,
Yes, the cadences work for major or minor chords. So for instance, yeah, so like
so any combinations, like.
yeah, it turns out that when you have a capital 5, a major 5 going to a 1 chord, it's a authentic cadence. When you have a capital 4 going to for minor, in the most conservative definition, a major 5 going to a 1 is a dominant, is a authentic cadence. A 4 chord going to a 1 chord in either major or minor is going to be a plagal cadence. And then a 1 chord going to a 5 chord a 1 chord going to a major 5 chord is most traditionally thought of as a half cadence.
Okay, thank you. Because on the notes, like it's only capital letters, so.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I was just sorry, I wasn't actually sharing my screen. You're right. I didn't actually demarcate those. So for instance, yes, because we were first learning them in the context of major. So I'll try to update this so that it also includes minor as well. So
okay.
Yes, good question.
Yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
Have a good day. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.